Dr. Dow and I have been working on this topic of autism and employment for about 3 years now. Now, I was very fortunate to attend the 2017 Targeting Autism Forum, which is hosted by the State Library of Illinois, and this year is also co-hosted by Dominican University's LIS program. And it's a really great environment if you have the opportunity to actually meet with library employees with and without autism and kind of engage in this very valuable dialogue like you all are doing to an extent today. It was all the way back then that we started talking about our research that we are presenting today, and we received a lot of really great feedback. So I'm very happy that we now have gotten to the point where we can share our findings and implications with you all. I think a very important thing to remember is that most disabilities last throughout the lifespan and affect virtually all aspects of an individual's life. So there's a lot of very important emerging literature on the topic of services for individuals with disabilities, particularly children with disabilities, and that is excellent. However, that's a very limited part of the entire lifespan of an individual with a disability. Individuals with disabilities both want and need to work. It's really a fundamental aspect of what makes us human. Everybody works. Everybody, whether they like it or not, has to work in their life. And so when you are unable to work, you lack something that's really fundamental to the human experience. And lack of equal opportunity is really a global cross-disciplinary crisis that affects virtually all professions. However, it is really in the service-oriented professions like ours, like library and information science, that the focus on need and access and use take a very strong focus, that we should be taking the lead on these types of issues, on what do employees with disabilities really need and want in order to feel comfortable in the work environment. And as a profession that has been really trying to promote greater diversity, and I would say to an extent failing at accomplishing that goal, it's really important that we assess our values holistically and focus on what the actual individuals who feel marginalized and who are marginalized want and need in order to feel comfortable in these work environments. Now, I'll say when we presented this topic at a local conference about a year ago, actually I think it was just me who presented it at that time, I had one professional librarian come up to me and accuse me of trying to create 1984 by controlling people's language use, which definitely misses the entire point of what we're talking about in this presentation. I do not care how you speak among a close group of colleagues or friends or in a research scenario, but when you're communicating professionally, in job ads, policies, instructions, in your classes, think carefully about what you're saying, like you would do when using a controlled vocabulary and developing metadata. It is important to know, and also a very important component of positive behavioral support, or a term you might be more relevant to you all is workplace cultural supports, is that we are constantly communicating, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, intentional or unintentional. We are always communicating information that can be perceived by others. And it seems to me and to a lot of people, I think, that people with disabilities like autism, people with communicative disabilities particularly, have this kind of sixth sense or very adept skill at perceiving this information, and it will affect their emotions and their perceptions of you and their environment. So you need to be very careful, not just with the language you use to communicate, but also your nonverbal actions and your written instructions. That's all stuff that they will pick up on. And they can really sense, I think, the people who are going to be comforting and supportive to them, and those who will make their lives very difficult. They're very adept at picking up on cues in your verbal and nonverbal language to that end. And the process really starts with the job description and what we've talked about today, because that's the first exposure an individual has to your organization and to you. But it continues throughout the entire lifespan of their career. And important aspects include how they're trained, whether their job duties especially actually align with the job description. So not just having a job description that says, these are some things we'd like to see. We don't know if you'll actually be doing this or not, but if you're good at it, that's good for us. Another thing we can potentially use, but actually making sure that you really think about what they're going to be doing in this job and aligning the job description with the duties. So you have these expectations that can be formed by the employees, so they can feel comfortable knowing I can do all this stuff in this job description with reasonable accommodations, so I can feel comfortable doing the job, rather than thinking they can do the stuff in the job description with reasonable accommodations, then getting to the job and realizing there's a lot of things that they didn't know they were signing up for and that they don't necessarily feel comfortable or able to do. And that really doesn't benefit anyone when you put someone in a situation like that. The more an individual struggles with communication and with understanding language, the more important it is that you effectively communicate with them, I believe. And we really should not try to hide information by not accurately telling people what they will be doing for their job. We should make this information broadly available and explicitly stated, and we should be willing to provide more information or rephrase the information that we provide upon request of the individual. We really have to be willing to provide a level of additional information that can support the additional needs of individuals with disabilities. Obviously, they may have additional questions, they may have additional accommodations that they would like to request. And providing limited information about their job, both beforehand and while they're starting the job, makes it very difficult for them to know what kinds of accommodations they may need to request, or if they're going to feel comfortable with this job. Again, it doesn't really benefit anyone if you hire somebody and then later on they find out or feel that they don't feel comfortable in the job and quit very soon afterwards. I think it's important to remember that we select job candidates based on their skills and knowledge and not on their ability to guess what they're going to be doing. Otherwise, our profession would be full of gamblers and astrologers. So why would we make our employees guess about what they should be doing? Let's make things very clear. Let's make it clear throughout the entire career lifespan. In the job descriptions, this is what you're going to be doing until further notice. This is what we have set forward for you. When you start the job, we have very explicit directions. We model what they're going to be doing using someone who has similar job duties. You follow them around for a day or two so they can really see this is not just what you're going to be doing, but this is how you're going to be doing it. And when we change job duties, because that will inevitably happen, library and information science is a profession and a discipline that is really built on a foundation of change throughout its history. So change will happen, but making very clear what change is going to happen, when, and saying how these changes are going to occur and how it could potentially affect employees is very important to making individuals comfortable with change. And it's also important to note that all these changes, all these ideas of modeling what they're going to be doing, about effectively communicating job duties, that really benefits everyone. And so we look at it through this lens of supporting employment for individuals with disability, because the unemployment rate is so terrible for those individuals. And library jobs and library and information science professions are really an excellent environment, I would say, for individuals with disabilities to work. And we really want to increase the diversity of our professions. But it really is changes that benefit every single worker. Having clear directions does not disadvantage anyone. Having clearly communicated changes and modeling what people are going to be doing does not disadvantage anyone. It benefits everyone. No one is going to complain about having the first 2 days of their job being modeled by an employee currently serving in a similar role. And if they do, that's really their problem, not yours, because that's not something that is really should cause them a lot of distress or alarm. Finally, it is really important that we are not afraid of individuals with disabilities. And I say this because I saw this a lot, even when I worked in an organization specifically created to serve individuals with disabilities. And I also see it, by the way, often in regard to individuals for whom English is not their primary language. So working with individuals who are international students, I see occasionally on college campuses. Just because someone communicates differently, learns differently, or has different abilities does not mean that they are more difficult to work with, or that you should be confused as to how to interact with them. As far as I know, everyone in this world is different, but equal and deserves the same level of respect and thoughtful communication. The types of changes that Dr. Dow and I talk about in our work, as I've said previously, benefit everyone. And there should really not be any qualms or difficulties